The Golden Pact. Patton and Virgil are not happy with the recent developments with Deceit, and they're not going to let it go any further. After Patton sunk out from the common room, his mind and chest both were on fire from his emotions thrown into complete turmoil. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't go back to his own room. That would only amplify how he was feeling and make it so Thomas acutely felt it as well, and he couldn't talk to the others after he yelled at him the way he did. And so the heart went to the only person left, the only side remaining that he actually felt the same way he did. Virgil welcomed him into his room quietly, shutting the door and locking it behind him. The physical lock didn't do anything, but the very act of doing so made it so nobody else could pop up into his room without his permission. Patton took a seat on the edge of Virgil's bed, his hands locked together so tightly his knuckles had turned white. His eyes were closed, and Virgil could tell he was trying to contain the pure anger that was rolling off of him in waves. It almost scared Virgil. He'd never seen Patton like this, or at least it had been a very long time. "Hey, Patton, just breathe with me, okay?" Virgil whispered, moving to sit down next to the emotional side on the bed. Patton nodded as Virgil counted in. 4 in, 7 to hold, 8 out. They just sat there breathing until Patton was able to open his mouth without fear of simply screaming in frustration. He offered a weak smile to Virgil. "Sorry, kiddo. I guess Deceit's room really got to me. I'm all right, I promise." Virgil shook his head. "I'm gonna kill Roman for bringing you in there. You didn't see yourself, Patton. You were feral, out of control, insane even. It was terrifying." Patton looked down at his hands, sighing. "I'm sorry. Don't apologize. It's not your fault. It's theirs. Roman thought of the stupid plan and Logan went along with it. It nearly corrupted you for good. Can't believe they really want us to try and get along with Deceit." "He did save us." "Only because he's playing the long game. He wants us to trust him. He wants us to accept him into our group because that means he can get to Thomas. But I'm not going to allow it." Virgil was getting himself worked up, his voice going deeper and layered and dark. Patton watched him as he stood up and started pacing, trying to do something with all the negative energy. I just don't understand." "Understand what?" "Deceit. He makes Thomas tell lies to his friends and do things that hurt them. He keeps us from telling Thomas things that would make his life easier, but he also got us out of his room. He's playing at something. We can't trust him. He's a liar and a manipulator, and both of them have already fallen under his spell. But I'm not going to let that happen to us, Patton. No, we're going to push Deceit back into the shadows where he can rot forever." Patton's eyes widened, and he glanced up at Virgil, whose eyeshadow was only growing darker by the second. The fatherly side swallowed. "I don't want my family to get hurt, but I don't want them to be mad at me either. They want to accept Deceit and listen to what he has to say." Virgil whipped around to grab Patton's shoulders tightly, staring at him incredulously. "Patton, you can't seriously be saying that you want to side with them." Of course not," he cried, biting his tongue. "Of course not." Patton sighed, tears stinging at the corners of his eyes. I want Thomas to be happy, and he's happy with us, the 4 of us. We're a family, and I won't allow anyone to hurt them." Virgil stared silently for a moment, before nodding and taking a step back. "We won't. We need to find a way that they can see Deceit for what he truly is." Patton tilted his head. "How do we do that?" "We'd go to the sleepover. We'd do whatever those 2 want us to do. We pretend we're coming around. We watch Disney and eat popcorn and whatever else Roman plans." "How does that help us?" Virgil grinned. "Because we're not just going to be playing along. We're going to watch him carefully, watch his every move. And the moment he does anything to hurt Logan or Roman, we tell them and convince them that they're wrong about him." The anxious side shook his head darkly. "He can't change. He's hurt Thomas before, and he's only going to get more powerful if Thomas lets this happen. We need to convince him that he's wrong. And who better to do that than his morality?" I don't know, Virgil. Isn't this lying? "We won't tell him anything that isn't true. He knows we don't trust him. He's not going to buy it if we try to be buddy-buddy with him right away. But we laugh at his stupid jokes. We pretend we don't realize when he lies. We pretend we don't notice the things he does that are going to hurt them. And then, once we get him alone, we tell Roman exactly what we think of this new idea of his and shut it down for good. Patton bit his lip. It felt wrong, but at the same time it felt right. He was fighting within himself, morals versus emotions. For the first time in a long while, they weren't in sync. Patton didn't want what he thought was right. I want to protect them. I don't want my family to get hurt, Patton told Virgil, who just watched him carefully. And Deceit wants to hurt them. We won't allow it, Virgil finished, holding out his hand to Patton. The emotional side hesitated for just a moment before grabbing it and clasping Virgil's hand in his own. We're working together now, Patton. We'll make sure Deceit doesn't hurt anybody, and that he gets what he deserves in the end. And Patton's eyes twinkled with gold as he thought about how much happier Thomas would be once they succeeded.